Well, it was bound to happen eventually. I accidentally recorded a YouTube video for the Explain series that I had already recorded. Uh, but I decided to upload it anyways. The old video is in the description. But anyway, enjoy. Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we're going to be talking about Python packaging again, and specifically we're going to be covering extras, which is a way to specify optional dependencies in Python packages. And I'm going to show you how they work and how you would use them if you were distributing a package that needed to have optional dependencies. Anyway, let's jump into it. Okay, so we're going to start with the setup.py today. If you're using setup tools, that would be probably where you would specify this, or setup.cfg, or the other ways you can make that happen. There are also other packaging tools, and so you may want to consult whatever one you're using. Poetry has their own way of specifying this, and so does every other packaging tool. But setup tools is kind of the lowest common denominator, so we're going to start with that. From setup tools, import setup, we're going to be basically writing our setup.py, just making an example package, giving it a version. I'm going to use py modules because that's the simplest way to make a package. Let's just say example.py. And let's say that it has a dependency that it always needs. And so you would specify that in install requires, let's say config v. And then extras require. I think that's the name. I always mix up where the S is supposed to go. We're going to try this and see where it goes. This is a way to specify where your additional optional dependencies are listed. So let's say that we have two different extras here, one of them being a YAML extra. Let's say that our example package works without needing any sort of special configuration loading, but maybe you want to add special behavior for loading YAML files. And so you might say there's an extra that's named YAML that when you add that, it installs PyYAML. Let's say we also had one for TOML, which is whatever. And so you would list your extras require here. We're also going to add some entry points just so that we can have some little command line scripts just to demonstrate some things. Console scripts. And let's say that we had an example console script which calls example, which is example main. My models. I specified this wrong. Let's say that we also had an example y, which is going to call example :y. This is going to be our special YAML-based loader. And we can also put one for T for loading our TOML-based loader. And this is going to bother me, so I'm going to alphabetize these. Okay, so here are our console scripts. There is a special syntax in setup tools that, as far as I can tell, doesn't get used at all. Pip completely ignores it. And I would not recommend using this syntax, but the intention of this syntax was to allow you to specify the extra name and only install these in that particular case. Or it was like some validate them at runtime thing. I'm not really sure, but it doesn't actually get used. But there's special code that allows you to specify an extra name after a particular entry point here. But it doesn't actually get used, so I would recommend against using it. I did find one popular package on PyPI that uses this, and I'll show you this later. But you don't actually need to do that there. Okay, so this is how you would specify extras. This allows people to specify an extra name and get additional dependencies installed. So next, let's write our little Python script here. We specified that config v is always a dependency here. We also had our special T entry point. I usually will hide the import for my optional dependency inside of the functions that need it, or you can specify it at the module scope and do something like try import tomli except import error pass, and conditionally check for it later. I guess you would probably do tomli equals none or something like that. I find this to be way more work than is necessary, so I usually, this is the one time where I sequester imports inside of functions, because usually I like to have them all at the top. I also find it useful to self-document in case someone gets an import error, what they would need to do to install your package properly. And so I'm going to put the pip install command on this particular import line. That way it shows up in the stack trace if someone were to accidentally do this. And this is the special syntax for installing extras. I guess we're seeing that a little bit early, where it uses square brackets and then the extra name inside of here. And if you have more than one extra, you will separate them by commas. So this would install both the TOML and the YAML extra here. But we don't actually need that. So we're just going to do that. Let's make our other extra here, which does the PyYAML one. I'm just going to copy and paste because that's the easiest way to do this. And instead of TOML, we're going to use YAML, say example T, and just our normal main function as well. From default main. And now we're going to see if I typed all this correctly and install it into a virtual environment. So if we do pip install dot, this will install the package in its default form, so without any of those extra dependencies installed. And so you'll see here we pulled in config v because that was a required dependency, but we didn't pull in any other dependencies but that. If we look inside VF bin, you'll notice though that those extra entry points are still available here. So it is still going to be possible for someone to try and call that even without the extras. And I believe the intention of this special syntax was to make those non-install, but it makes no difference, so don't bother. Don't bother. Now, if we were to call example now, you'll see that we get our default main, and it doesn't crash even though we don't have the YAML or TOML installed. If we call example T though, which was one of our specialized entry points, you'll see that we get an error message trying to import TOML. But fortunately, this little comment gives people a hint on what they should do. Now, sometimes you might need to be a little bit more explicit about this because people might not know that, oh, I should run this command and then it will fix this problem. But anyway, I am going to install the TOML extra. Now I'm using dot here instead of example. If you were to publish this to PyPI, I'm sure they don't allow a package named example, but we're going to use dot bracket TOML. So dot being the special package in the current working directory. Some shells will grumble about square brackets here, so if you're in Zish, you probably need to separate or surround this in single quotes. If you're on Windows, you'll need to use double quotes, etc., etc. I guess I can use double quotes for Zish as well. But this will now install the current package, but also install the TOML extra. And you'll notice here that it also pulled in the TOML package. So now if we were to call example T, it succeeds and can import TOML. That's how you specify those extra dependencies. And if you want to install most duplicates of them, you would do toml, comma, YAML, and this will install both of those extras. So it'll make sure that we have toml installed. Let's say somewhere in here, yeah, requirement already satisfied, and we also installed PyYAML, so we both of those now. Now example T and example Y both work. But anyway, that's kind of the basics behind extras. Oh, I did want to mention one other thing. You can also have multiple dependencies here. So if you needed to install some other package as well, you can list as many as you need here. And the way this ends up in the metadata of lib site packages, example dist info, I believe it ends up in metadata. Yeah, the way it ends up in the metadata is you get a requirement that is specified using a particular extra. So that's how this gets specified there. Note at runtime that it isn't always recorded whether you've installed it with an extra or not. As far as I can tell, there's no difference that's discernible in the package metadata. So the only way to detect an extra is to try and import those particular packages to figure out whether it's installed. But anyway, hopefully you found this useful. If there are additional things you would like me to explain, leave a comment below or reach out to me on the various platforms. But thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.